My daughter-in-law, Marissa Calloway, left my 5-year-old granddaughter Emma at my place for just one night. The next morning, Emma whispered to me, "Grandma, Mom said I can't tell you what I saw at home." I asked her gently, "Sweetheart, what did you see?" Her answer made me call the police right away. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of justice reaches. I still remember that night vividly. The pale yellow glow of the street lamps spilled across my porch, casting trembling silhouettes of bare branches, shadows that seemed to mirror my own uneasy heart. I lived in a modest, aging home at the edge of Atlanta, Georgia, where every corner carried memories I could never let go of. That evening, Marissa brought Emma over, saying she had to work the night shift. It wasn't the first time I'd heard that excuse, but this time felt different. She lingered at the threshold, hesitant, her knuckles white from clenching the straps of her purse. Her eyes darted nervously down the alley as though she feared someone, or something, was lurking in the darkness. "You don't mind, do you?" she asked me for the third time, her voice trembling. I'd already assured her with a smile, but she didn't seem convinced. When I searched her face, the bright, kind daughter-in-law I once knew was nowhere to be found. In her place was a woman carrying a tension I couldn't put into words. Beside her, little Emma pressed tightly against her mother, clutching her old teddy bear, Mr. Buttons. Her school clothes were rumpled, likely worn all day. She looked up at me with those wide, pleading eyes that seemed to beg for safety. My chest ached just looking at her. It had been too long since I had heard her carefree laughter or seen her run around the yard like she once did. As Marissa turned to leave, she knelt to Emma's height and whispered something soft. "Sleep well, my love. I'll come for you tomorrow." Then she looked up, and for the briefest second, her eyes locked with mine. Something in that fleeting glance weighed on me. Whether it was a warning or a cry for help, I couldn't tell. Then she was gone, her figure swallowed by the night, leaving Emma and me alone on the porch. I guided Emma inside, where the smell of homemade chicken noodle soup filled the small kitchen. I'd prepared it just for her. "Eat a little, sweetheart," I said, placing a bowl before her, but she stirred it aimlessly, her appetite absent. "I'm not hungry, Grandma," she murmured, her voice barely above a breath. Emma curled up on the sofa afterward, clutching Mr. Buttons, staring blankly at the cartoon screen. I knew she wasn't truly watching. Her eyes looked far away, hollow, as if she carried a burden far too heavy for her young heart. I longed to ask what troubled her, but each time I tried, that empty distance in her gaze silenced me. Maybe all she needed was time to feel safe again. That night, I set up the old daybed beside mine in the room where I still kept Daniel's rocking chair. Emma lay quietly, her back turned, hugging Mr. Buttons close. In the stillness, her deep sighs reached me, sighs that sounded far too weary for a child. They reminded me of my own sleepless nights after Daniel's death, nights where only my heartbeat echoed in the darkness. I wanted to hold her, promise her she'd never be alone, but I was afraid of frightening her further. Near midnight, I woke suddenly to the sound of her whimpering. Emma was tossing in her sleep, whispering, "Grandma, I'm scared. Don't leave me." I touched her shoulder, but she remained asleep, her small face tight with fear. Stroking her hair, I whispered, "I'm here, my love. I'm not going anywhere." Yet inside, a cold worry began creeping in, one I couldn't shake. When dawn came, sunlight slipped through the blinds in golden streaks. I made breakfast, hoping the comfort of warm cocoa and scrambled eggs would brighten her morning. But Emma shuffled out with puffy red eyes still gripping Mr. Buttons. I smiled softly and asked, "Did you sleep well, darling?" She only lowered her head, lips pressed tight. Finally, she sat at the table, and I placed her plate in front of her. Then, in a trembling whisper that froze me in place, she said, "Grandma, Mom told me not to tell you what I saw at the house." My hand faltered, the spatula clattering to the counter. Kneeling to meet her eyes, I asked gently, "Sweetheart, what did you see?" Tears welled as she pressed her lips together, struggling with fear. And then her small voice broke through, "There's a little girl locked in the basement at home. She won't stop crying. She says her hands hurt." The spoon slipped from my fingers, the clang echoing in the silence. Emma's eyes, wide with terror, begged me for help. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing, her small frame shaking as if she had been holding this secret far too long. I hugged her tight, though inside my mind reeled. Could this be real? A child trapped in Marissa's house? I wanted to dismiss it as a nightmare, but Emma's fear was too raw, too real. I knew then that my life, and hers, was about to change forever. I held Emma close, her tears soaking into my blouse as she clung to me like a frightened bird. Her trembling words kept echoing in my ears. A little girl locked in the basement. I wanted to believe it was just her imagination, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The terror in her eyes was too genuine. I smoothed her tangled hair and whispered, "It's all right, sweetheart. Grandma will handle this." But inside, my chest tightened with fear. What had Marissa gotten involved in? What was happening under her roof? My thoughts drifted back to brighter days, when this home was full of life. Daniel, my son, used to stride in from work as a civil engineer, his laughter filling every corner. He'd scoop Emma up onto his shoulders, and she would giggle as though she was flying. Marissa back then was cheerful, always in the kitchen beside me, trying new recipes and asking, "Do you think Daniel will like this one?" Those memories glittered like jewels I thought would never fade. Family dinners had been my favorite time. Daniel telling stories from the construction site while Emma listened wide-eyed, interrupting with questions that made us laugh. And yet, one cruel night had shattered everything. I still hear the phone call that stole my son from me. The trembling voice on the other end told me his car had veered off a wet road into a ravine. My Daniel was gone in an instant. His funeral was a blur of gray skies and sobs. Emma was just 2 years old then, confused, asking me where her daddy had gone. I told her he was in a faraway place, but still watching over her. Marissa never recovered. She withdrew into herself, her once sunny smile disappearing. She locked herself in her room for hours, and when I tried to comfort her, she'd brush me off coldly. Eventually, she said she needed a fresh start and moved into an apartment in another part of town. My heart broke when she took Emma with her. Weekends with my granddaughter became the only light in my life. But even during those visits, I began noticing changes. Emma grew quieter, her laughter rare. She clutched Mr. Buttons constantly and avoided my eyes whenever I asked how she was. "I'm fine, Grandma," she'd say, but her sad little face betrayed her words. I questioned Marissa, but she only replied evasively, "Don't worry, I take good care of her." That morning, after Emma's whisper about the basement, I tried to keep myself calm. I stroked her back and softly promised, "It's going to be okay, sweetheart." But my mind was racing. If there truly was another child, I needed proof. That afternoon, I walked Emma to school, holding her hand tightly along the gravel path. She stayed silent, occasionally glancing at me as though she wanted to speak but couldn't. I forced a smile and asked, "What are you learning today, darling?" She only shook her head. My heart broke. She was carrying a secret no child her age should bear. At school, I decided to confide in her teacher, Mrs. Carter. She was a middle-aged woman with sharp, observant eyes and a kind demeanor. I found her in the staff lounge and quietly shared what Emma had told me. My voice trembled as I mentioned the girl in the basement. Mrs. Carter frowned deeply, clasping her hands. "I've noticed changes in Emma, too," she admitted. "She's distracted in class, often startles easily." "And in art class?" She hesitated, then added, "She's been drawing disturbing pictures. A little child alone in a dark room, surrounded by black lines, almost like prison bars." Her words made my heart constrict. Those black lines were exactly what Emma had whispered about. "Do you think this is just her imagination?" I asked, my voice nearly breaking. "I can't say for certain," Mrs. Carter replied carefully, "but something is troubling her deeply." "She may be going through more than we realize," I thanked her, though my legs trembled as I left the lounge. My head was spinning. Emma's drawings, her whispered words, and her fear. It all painted a picture too dark to ignore. Later that day, I sat on my porch, the crepe myrtles swaying in the breeze, petals falling like blood-red tears. That was when my neighbor, Mr. Whitaker, strolled by. An older widower with a sharp gaze, he stopped when he saw my worried face. "Mrs. Calloway," he said gravely, "you look like you've seen the devil himself." I tried to brush it off, but he wasn't fooled. He sat beside me and pressed, "This isn't nothing." "What's going on with Emma?" I hesitated, then cautiously told him a little. She mentioned something strange, about another child at Marissa's house. His eyes narrowed. After a pause, he lowered his voice. "I didn't tell anyone this, but one night last week, I couldn't sleep. I saw Marissa rush into her house very late, past midnight, and she was holding the hand of a little girl. But it wasn't Emma. This child was smaller, with shorter hair. I froze, my heart thundering. "Are you certain?" I whispered. He nodded solemnly. I also heard muffled crying. At the time, I thought maybe Emma was sick, but now... He trailed off, worry etched on his face. His words struck me like lightning. The pieces were falling into place, and they formed a terrifying puzzle. That night, when Marissa came to pick up Emma, I stood at the doorway, my chest heavy with unease. Emma clung to me for a moment, her little arms wrapped tightly around Mr. Button's. Then Marissa's sharp eyes cut through me like a blade. "Thanks for watching her," she said curtly, her tone stripped of warmth. Emma hesitated, but Marissa's hand closed firmly around hers, pulling her away before I could say a word. I watched them disappear down the alley, my heart sinking. Sleep did not come easily that night. By dawn, I made up my mind. I couldn't ignore Emma's whisper or Mr. Whitaker's account. My granddaughter's fear wasn't imaginary. Something dreadful was happening. I put on my coat, boarded the bus into the city, and headed straight for the police precinct. The building was an old structure with stained walls and the lingering scent of stale coffee. At the front desk, my hands trembled as I told the young officer, "I need to speak with whoever is in charge." He led me into a small room where Captain Monroe sat behind a scratched desk, his weathered face betraying years of grim experience. I told him everything. Emma's words, the strange drawings her teacher described, and Mr. Whitaker's testimony about the unknown little girl. My voice quivered, but I forced myself to speak clearly. "Sir, I know this sounds unbelievable, but my granddaughter isn't lying. I believe there's a child in danger." Captain Monroe tapped his fingers on the desk, listening intently, then shook his head slowly. "Mrs. Calloway, we don't have enough. A child's drawings, whispers, and a neighbor's late-night sighting aren't sufficient grounds for a search warrant." His words crashed over me like ice water. "But what if she's telling the truth?" I pleaded, my voice breaking. "If we wait, what happens to that child?" Compassion flickered briefly in his eyes, but his voice remained steady. "We'll file your report, but without stronger evidence, we cannot act further." I left the precinct with my heart in pieces. The sun was shining, but I only felt cold. At the market later, whispers trailed behind me like shadows. "Poor Mrs. Calloway, she's losing her mind," a fish vendor muttered. Another said, "Who accuses their own daughter-in-law of kidnapping?" The sting of their gossip was sharper than any blade. Marissa must have gotten to them first, painting me as a delusional old woman desperate for attention. That evening, Marissa returned, this time bringing her brother Caleb. She clutched Emma tightly in the yard, tears streaming down her face as she wailed, "She's slandering me. She says I kidnap children. She wants to ruin me." Caleb, tall and imposing, pointed at me, his voice a roar. Leave my sister alone. You've gone too far." Neighbors spilled into the street, their eyes full of pity and suspicion. "Poor Mrs. Calloway," someone whispered. "She just misses her granddaughter." Another voice agreed. "She's losing her grip." Emma turned in the car window, her face pressed to the glass. Her eyes pleaded with me. "Grandma, save me." I wanted to run to tear her from Marissa's arms, but my body felt nailed to the ground. The car pulled away, leaving me standing alone, humiliated before the whole neighborhood. Inside, I collapsed into my old armchair, staring at Daniel's photo on the wall. "What should I do, my son?" I whispered. His smile in the picture offered no answer, only deepened the ache in my chest. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, Emma's whisper haunted me. "There's a little girl locked in the basement." By morning, the market vendors no longer greeted me. Instead, they exchanged pitying glances and muttered, "Poor Evelyn, she's lost her mind." I hurried through the aisles, clutching my basket, every word cutting into me like a hammer blow. On my way home, my dear friend Margaret stopped me. She carried a wicker basket, her expression filled with concern. Pulling me aside, she squeezed my hands. "Evelyn, I don't believe you'd invent something like this. I saw Emma's eyes last night. That child is afraid. If you give up now, you'll regret it forever." Her words struck me like a bolt of lightning. I hadn't realized how desperately I needed someone to believe me. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered, "Margaret, thank you. But I don't know what else I can do." "No one believes me. You mustn't give up," she urged firmly. "Not for Emma. Not for that other child." Keep fighting her faith rekindled a faint spark inside me. That afternoon, I trimmed the crepe myrtles in the yard, their red petals falling like drops of blood. As I swept the ground, hurried footsteps startled me. Mr. Whitaker appeared at the fence, his cane in one hand and a grave look in his eyes. "Mrs. Calloway," he said urgently, lowering his voice. "You need to see this." He pulled an old cell phone from his pocket, explaining that his nephew had checked the corner store's security cameras. The grainy video showed Marissa, past midnight, dragging a little girl inside her house. She wasn't Emma. She was smaller, disheveled, and dressed in worn pajamas. My heart stopped. This was no longer just Emma's fearful imagination. This was proof. I stared at the shaky video on Mr. Whitaker's phone, my breath caught in my throat. There she was, Marissa, my daughter-in-law, tugging along a small girl I had never seen before. The child's hair was messy, her pajamas ragged, and her steps uncertain, as though she was too weak to walk properly. My knees nearly gave out. Emma's whisper about the girl in the basement was no longer a child's fearful imagination. It was real. "Mr. Whitaker," I choked, "are you sure there's no mistake?" He shook his head, his eyes grave. "I was in my yard that night. I saw her with my own eyes. That wasn't Emma. I know it." I clutched the phone like it was the only lifeline in a storm. "You don't know what this means to me," I whispered, tears pressing against my eyes. "Thank you." Without another thought, I rushed out the door. My coat barely kept out the cold wind as I walked the long road to the police precinct. Each step echoed with determination. I thought of Daniel, my late son, and of Emma's frightened eyes. I had to protect them. I had to protect that unknown child. Inside the precinct, the air was heavy with the smell of paper and burnt coffee. I marched to the desk, demanding to see Captain Monroe again. He looked up in surprise as I entered, but his expression stayed stern. "I have proof," I said, my voice shaking but steady enough. I set the phone on his desk and played the clip. The grainy image of Marissa pulling the child into her house flickered across the screen. Captain Monroe studied it, frowning. "That could be a neighbor's daughter, maybe a child she was babysitting," he said flatly. My heart sank, but I leaned forward, refusing to give up. "No, Captain. I've lived in that neighborhood my whole life. That little girl doesn't belong to anyone there. And Emma told me what she saw. A child locked in the basement, crying in pain. You must investigate for a moment." He hesitated. Then he called over a young officer and instructed, "Check recent missing persons reports." I gripped the edge of my coat, my heart pounding as the officer typed furiously at the computer. A few minutes later, his voice rang out. "Commander, look at this. The girl in the video matches the description of Sophie Turner, age 5, reported missing 2 weeks ago from the next county." The room spun around me. Sophie. She had a name. The officer pulled up the details. The missing child poster, the terrified parents' faces. Captain Monroe's expression shifted, his tired eyes suddenly burning with determination. "Verify this immediately. Contact the neighboring precinct. I want the full file," he barked. Tears welled in my eyes, but I held them back. "Thank you," I whispered hoarsely. For the first time, I felt that maybe someone was finally listening. Before long, neighbors began trickling into the precinct. Mrs. Miller, the pie vendor, and Mr. Franklin, the man who often played chess with Mr. Whitaker, arrived with anxious faces. "We've heard strange noises from Marissa's house at night," Mrs. Miller admitted nervously. "Crying, muffled sounds. We thought it was just Emma having tantrums, but now—" Mr. Franklin nodded gravely. "I once saw a light flicker in her basement just before dawn. It didn't seem right. Their testimonies were like the final pieces of a puzzle snapping together. Captain Monroe's voice grew firm. "That's enough. We'll request a search warrant." When I left the station, my legs trembled, but a small flame of hope burned inside me. Still, fear gnawed at me. What would happen once the truth came out? Marissa, the woman who had once sat with me in the kitchen, laughing over recipes, who had once called me Mom, was now a stranger. That night, the rain drummed against the roof like an ominous warning. I sat in the dim light of the living room, staring at Daniel's photograph. His gentle smile seemed to urge me onward. Be strong. Protect Emma. Protect Sophie. "Help me, son," I whispered through my tears. "I can't do this alone." I thought of Emma's trembling whisper, of Sophie's pale figure in the video, her tiny hand clutched in Marissa's. The images pierced my heart, but steeled my resolve. By morning, the gossip around town had grown louder. At the market, I heard whispers follow me again. There goes Mrs. Calloway accusing her own daughter-in-law. Poor woman, she's gone mad. I kept my head down, clutching my basket, ignoring the sting of their words. That afternoon, Margaret arrived with a hot casserole. She sat beside me at the table, grasping my hand. "Evelyn, be brave. Don't let their chatter weaken you. The truth will come out." Her warmth steadied me, but I still trembled. "I'm terrified, Margaret. If the truth is too dark, how will Emma bear it?" "You'll protect her," she said firmly. "You always have." Later, Mr. Whitaker returned, his face pale. "Last night I heard strange noises again," he said gravely. "Banging, muffled sobs. Evelyn, I don't think that child is safe." His words were another weight on my chest. The urgency pressed harder with each passing hour. I knew then that time was running out. That night, I called Mrs. Carter, Emma's teacher. My voice trembled as I said, "If anything happens to me, please watch over Emma. Promise me." Her voice was steady and kind. "Don't worry, Mrs. Calloway, I'll look after her. You do what you need to do." Before bed, I gathered my documents, family photos, and Emma's drawings, placing them carefully in a small bag. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I needed to be ready. Close to midnight, the phone rang. My heart nearly stopped as I picked it up. It was Captain Monroe. "Mrs. Calloway," his voice came through, steady and firm. "We're executing the search warrant at Marissa's house tomorrow at dawn. Be ready." My knees buckled as I sank into the chair, clutching the receiver. "Thank you, Captain," I whispered, tears spilling freely. I set the phone down, staring out the rain-streaked window. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that awaited us all. Before dawn, I awoke with my chest burning as though the weight of the world was pressing down on me. Today would decide everything. I dressed slowly, pulling on a thick coat and scarf, tying my shoes with trembling hands. Before stepping out, I gazed at Daniel's photo on the wall. His smile, frozen in time, seemed to whisper back, "Be strong, Mother." The growl of patrol cars outside pulled me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find Captain Monroe standing firm, his face a mask of composure. "It's time," he said. I clutched the bag holding Emma's drawings and documents, the only armor I had, and followed. The ride to Marissa's house felt endless, though in truth it was only minutes. Through the fogged window, I saw the sky still dark, heavy clouds swirling as though mirroring the storm inside me. My thoughts circled Emma's frightened eyes, Sophie's small figure in the grainy video, and Marissa's cold stare the last time we met. Would I truly have the strength to face what waited behind those walls? We pulled up before the gate. The crepe myrtle petals lay scattered across the yard like blood on snow. I stood frozen, heart pounding in my chest. Captain Monroe knocked sharply on the door, the sound echoing through the stillness of the morning. The door swung open, and there was Marissa. For an instant, her face revealed shock, then hardened into fury. "What are you doing here?" she shouted, her voice icy. Captain Monroe raised the warrant in front of her calmly. "We have legal grounds to search the premises. Please cooperate." Her eyes flicked to me, blazing with hatred. "You did this," she spat. "You want to ruin me, don't you? You want to take Emma away." My throat locked. I wanted to tell her I only wanted to protect Emma and save Sophie, but the words wouldn't come. Suddenly, Caleb burst from the house, his heavy frame tense, his voice roaring. "This is harassment. You're humiliating my family. You have no right." Two officers moved forward, blocking him as Captain Monroe signaled his team inside. I glimpsed Emma crouched in the corner of the living room, clutching Mr. Buttons, her eyes red from crying. Every fiber of me wanted to run to her, but Marissa's glare pinned me in place. The officers searched each room, their boots echoing against the tile. The air was thick with tension, Marissa crying and screaming as though trying to drown out the truth. "It's all lies. She wants to destroy me. You believe a delusional old woman over me?" Her words stabbed at my heart, but I remained silent, praying the truth would reveal itself. Then the officers reached the end of the hallway. An old iron door stood there, its rusty hinges groaning at the slightest touch. The atmosphere shifted instantly. A thick, suffocating silence filled the house. Marissa's face drained of color. "You can't go in there," she shrieked, throwing herself in front of the door. "It's just storage. No one is allowed in." Her desperation was unmistakable. My knees trembled. Emma's whisper returned to me like thunder. "There's a girl locked in the basement." One officer stepped forward, master key in hand. Caleb lunged in protest, roaring, but two others restrained him firmly. "You can't open it!" he bellowed, his struggle futile. My fists clenched so tightly they hurt. The neighbors, drawn by the commotion, began gathering outside, whispering anxiously. Could Evelyn have been right all along? I heard one murmur. The lock clicked. The door groaned open, its creak like the scream of buried secrets. From the darkness below came a faint trembling cry, the fragile sob of a child. The officer shone his flashlight down the steps. The beam cut through the stale, damp air, illuminating broken boxes and stained walls. Then, from the shadows, a small figure stumbled forward. It was Sophie. Her hair was tangled, her pajamas torn, her thin arms shaking. A filthy rag was wrapped around one hand, stained dark. Her wide, terrified eyes darted around the room, as if begging for rescue. I gasped, my legs nearly giving out. I clung to the porch post, tears spilling as I whispered her name. Sophie. A female officer rushed forward, scooping the frail child into her arms. "Call EMS!" she shouted. Sophie clutched a faded cushion, trembling as though it was her only anchor to safety. Gasps and murmurs rose from the gathered neighbors. "My God, Evelyn was right," someone said. The same voices that once mocked me now fell silent, shame in their eyes. But I felt no triumph, only pain, for Sophie, for Emma, and for the family I no longer recognized. Marissa broke into wild screams, throwing herself toward the officer holding Sophie. "No, I didn't hurt her. I just wanted to protect her." Her voice cracked, but conviction was gone. It was the desperate wail of a woman whose lies had been stripped bare. Caleb raged against the officers holding him. "It's all a setup. You're framing my sister. That old woman planned this." His fury meant nothing now. Captain Monroe's voice cut through the chaos, icy and unyielding. "Silence. The crime is in plain sight." He ordered the rest of his team to search the basement. What they unearthed next froze the breath in my chest. A bundle of notebooks filled with strange symbols, scattered writings about rituals, and the name Victor Hale scrawled repeatedly. Captain Monroe's face darkened. "Victor Hale," he muttered, "leader of that extremist group from last year. This goes deeper than we thought." The ground beneath me seemed to vanish. How had Marissa, once a sweet young woman who laughed in my kitchen, fallen into such darkness? The name Victor Hale echoed in the room like a curse. I remembered hearing it on the news, a fanatical cult leader accused of abducting children for twisted rituals. He had disappeared months ago, leaving trails of fear and unanswered questions. Captain Monroe rifled through the notebooks, his brow furrowed. "This isn't just a kidnapping," he said grimly. "It's tied to something bigger." Something dangerous. Marissa collapsed to the floor, sobbing. "I didn't hurt her. I swear I didn't. I just wanted to help him." Her words tumbled out incoherently, her hands clawing at her hair. The desperation in her voice chilled me. I stepped forward, my voice trembling with both fury and grief. "Help him? You brought a child into this madness, Marissa. Emma trusted you. Daniel trusted you. How could you?" Her eyes lifted to mine, hollow and wild. For a split second, I glimpsed the young woman she once was, but that light had long since gone out. The officers escorted Sophie outside to the waiting ambulance. I followed close behind, unable to take my eyes off her fragile form. Her tiny fingers gripped the paramedic's sleeve as though afraid she would be left behind again. My chest ached with a fierce, protective love. As the sirens wailed into the distance, I turned back to the house. Neighbors huddled together, their earlier whispers now replaced by wide-eyed shock. Mr. Whitaker stood at the fence, his cane trembling in his grasp. "Evelyn," he said softly, "you saved that child. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, but there was no victory in my heart, only sorrow." Inside, the search continued. Officers unearthed more disturbing evidence. Children's clothing stuffed in bags, strange candles burned to their stubs, and drawings scrawled across the basement walls in crimson ink. Captain Monroe's face hardened as he called his team. "Get forensics in here. We need every inch documented." Caleb roared in protest, still restrained. "This isn't what it looks like. My sister isn't a criminal. You don't understand." But no one listened. The truth lay bare around us. Emma sat silently on the couch, Mr. Buttons clutched tightly in her arms. Her wide eyes darted between the officers and her mother. I knelt beside her, my voice gentle. "Sweetheart, you're safe now." She looked up at me, her lips quivering. "Grandma." "I told you the truth, didn't I?" Tears blurred my vision. I kissed her forehead. "Yes, my love. You were so brave." Captain Monroe approached me, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Calloway, I have to ask, do you believe Marissa acted alone?" The question hit me like a blow. I thought of the notebooks, the symbols, the name Victor Hale scrawled in dark ink. My stomach twisted. "No," I whispered. She wasn't alone. She was part of something larger. He gave a grim nod. That's what I fear, too. The house, once filled with Emma's laughter and Daniel's dreams, now felt cursed. A shell of memories haunted by betrayal. I stepped outside, desperate for air. The dawn sky was streaked with pale light, but it brought me no comfort. Reporters had already gathered, cameras flashing. A microphone was thrust toward me. "Mrs. Calloway, did you know your daughter-in-law was connected to Victor Hale?" I turned away, shielding Emma from the chaos. This wasn't a moment for spectacle. A child had been saved, but darkness still loomed. Back at my home, I tucked Emma into the daybed, her small body finally relaxing after nights of fear. She drifted into sleep, clutching Mr. Buttons, her chest rising and falling steadily. For the first time in weeks, her face seemed at peace. I sat by the window, staring into the street. My hand shook as I thought about Sophie's hollow eyes, the basement filled with horrors, and the notebooks whispering of Hale's shadow. Margaret arrived just before noon, her arms wrapped around me in a fierce embrace. "I saw the news," she whispered. "Evelyn, you were right. You saved them." But my voice broke as I answered, "It's not over, Margaret." Not while Victor Hale is still out there. Marissa wasn't acting alone. This was only the beginning. Her grip tightened on my shoulders. "Then you must stay strong. For Emma, for Sophie, for every child still in danger." As the sun set, painting the sky crimson, I felt the weight of what was to come. I had uncovered one secret, but countless more lurked in the shadows. And though fear gnawed at my bones, I knew one thing for certain. I would not stop fighting. The days that followed felt like walking through a storm I could never escape. Reporters swarmed the street outside my home, their voices rising in a frenzy each time I stepped out for air. They wanted quotes, answers, details, anything that would turn tragedy into headlines. I ignored them, shielding Emma behind me whenever they tried to thrust microphones in her face. Inside, I kept the television off, but rumors traveled quickly. The news cycle painted Marissa as a monster, flashing Sophie's frightened face beside grim images of police carrying evidence bags out of the house. My stomach turned each time I thought of Emma seeing her mother's name in bold letters across the screen. Emma rarely spoke. She stayed curled up with Mr. Buttons, her small hand wrapped so tightly around the bear's arm that I feared the seams would split. Sometimes she would look at me with wide, searching eyes, as if begging for reassurance I wasn't going to leave her, too. At night, she crept into my bed, whispering, "Grandma, don't let them take me away." I stroked her hair, whispering back, "I'll never let anyone hurt you again, my darling." But even as I spoke, doubt gnawed at me. The system wasn't kind. Child services could intervene, questioning whether I, an aging grandmother, could properly care for her. On the third day, Captain Monroe visited. He looked weary, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. He sat at my kitchen table, sipping the tea I offered. "We've confirmed Sophie Turner is recovering in the hospital," he said. "Physically, she'll heal. Emotionally, it will take time." Tears stung my eyes. "At least she's safe now. That's what matters." He nodded, but his tone darkened. "Mrs. Calloway, our investigation uncovered communications between Marissa and Victor Hale. She wasn't just dabbling, she was part of his circle. He's still at large, and we believe he'll try to silence anyone connected to the case." A chill ran down my spine. "Do you mean Emma and me?" His jaw tightened. "We've arranged patrol cars to keep watch, but I urge you, be cautious. This man is dangerous." After he left, I drew the curtain shut and checked every lock twice. That night, every creak in the house made my heart leap. I kept a lamp burning until dawn, Emma's small hand clasped in mine as we tried to sleep. Margaret came by with groceries, her eyes full of concern. "You can't live in fear forever, Evelyn," she said gently. "I'm not afraid for myself," I whispered, glancing toward Emma playing quietly on the rug. I'm afraid for her, for what she's already endured. That evening, Emma surprised me by tugging on my sleeve. "Grandma," she whispered, "can I tell you something?" I knelt beside her. "Of course, sweetheart." "You can tell me anything," her voice trembled. "When Mommy told me not to talk, she said bad people would come if I did. She said they'd take me away to where Sophie was." My heart clenched. I hugged her tight. "You're safe now, Emma." "I promise." But even as I spoke, I knew Hale's shadow lingered. The following Sunday, church bells rang across town, their sound usually comforting, but now hollow to my ears. As I walked Emma to Sunday school, I noticed unfamiliar faces among the congregation, men lingering near the doorway, eyes scanning the crowd too carefully. My stomach knotted. Mr. Whitaker noticed too. "Strangers," he muttered, leaning on his cane. "Keep Emma close." I did. All service long, I held her hand, whispering silent prayers that Daniel was watching over us from above. That night, as Emma drifted to sleep, I sat by the window, staring at the streetlights flickering outside. Each passing shadow seemed like a warning. I whispered into the darkness, "Victor Hale, whoever you are, you won't have her. You won't take my granddaughter." Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The following week dragged by in heavy silence. Though the police patrol circled the block, their presence was more unsettling than comforting. Each time headlights swept across my curtains at night, Emma stirred in her sleep, whispering, "Grandma, is he here?" I held her close, assuring her, "No one will ever take you, my love." Yet my own chest ached with uncertainty. One afternoon, I received a call from the hospital. Sophie Turner wanted to see me. My heart raced as I arranged for Margaret to watch Emma and then boarded the bus across town. Sophie's hospital room was bathed in soft light, a stark contrast to the darkness she had been rescued from. The small child sat propped up on crisp white sheets, her frail arms dotted with healing bruises. When I entered, she looked at me with wide, fearful eyes, then slowly offered a faint smile. Her mother, Mrs. Turner, stood beside her bed. She clasped my hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You saved her. If it weren't for you, I don't know where my baby would be." Emotion welled in my chest. I squeezed her hands. No, it was Emma who saved her. She was the brave one who spoke up. Sophie reached for me timidly. When I took her hand, she whispered in a raspy voice, "Thank you, Grandma." Tears spilled freely down my face. That fragile voice, so full of pain yet gratitude, carved itself into my soul. After leaving the hospital, I walked through the park, the autumn wind scattering golden leaves at my feet. I should have felt relief, but instead a heavier dread settled over me. Sophie was safe, yes, but Hale remained out there, somewhere in the shadows, waiting. When I returned home, Emma rushed into my arms. "Don't leave me again, Grandma," she begged. Her desperation pierced me. "I won't, my love," I promised. "Never again." That evening, as I prepared dinner, a knock came at the door. My heart leapt, but when I opened it, it was Captain Monroe. His expression was grave. "Mrs. Calloway, we've discovered more," he said, stepping inside. He laid a file on my table, flipping it open. Inside were photographs of strange symbols, letters, and coded messages. These were recovered from Marissa's basement. They reference rituals, locations, and names of children. We believe Victor Hale runs an underground network, and your daughter-in-law was one of his pawns. My stomach turned. "Children," I whispered. "You mean Sophie wasn't the only one?" He nodded solemnly. "We believe there are more victims. We're tracking them now, but Hale is cunning. He vanishes before we arrive. Someone close to him is tipping him off." The weight of his words pressed down on me. More children, more families shattered. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked quietly. "Because," Monroe said firmly, "you and Emma may be targets. Hale will want to silence anyone tied to this case. Stay vigilant. Trust no one outside of the force." That night, I barely slept. I sat by Emma's bed, clutching her tiny hand while staring at the shadows shifting across the walls. The next day, I visited the market for bread and milk. Conversations hushed as I entered. No one mocked me anymore. Instead, they looked at me with a mix of pity and fear. A few whispered blessings under their breath. Others crossed themselves as though warding off evil. Mrs. Miller approached with trembling hands. "Evelyn," she whispered, "you were right all along. I'm sorry for doubting you." I nodded gently, though bitterness lingered. Their apologies didn't erase the isolation I had endured. That evening, Margaret stopped by with her usual basket of food. She noticed the exhaustion etched into my face and sat me down. "You're carrying too much alone," she said softly. I tried to smile. "I'll carry whatever I must, for Emma's sake." But in truth, my body felt as though it was breaking. Later, after Emma was asleep, I stepped onto the porch. The night air was cool, the street unusually quiet. I thought I saw a figure at the far end of the block, tall, unmoving, watching. My breath caught, and I hurried back inside, locking the door. That night, as I clutched Daniel's old sweater around my shoulders, one thought echoed louder than the rest. This was not the end. Victor Hale was still out there, and his shadow was drawing closer. The following morning began with a sharp knock at the door. My heart leapt into my throat, but when I opened it, I found Mrs. Carter, Emma's teacher, standing nervously on the porch. Her eyes flicked toward the street before she spoke. "Mrs. Calloway," she whispered, "I need to show you something." She pulled a folded sheet of paper from her bag. It was one of Emma's drawings, left behind at school. My hands shook as I opened it. Emma had drawn a dark figure towering over two small children. The figure had hollow eyes, arms stretched wide like claws. Beneath it, she had written in shaky letters, "The man Mommy listens to." A chill spread through me. "She never mentioned this," I murmured. Mrs. Carter placed a hand on my arm. "She doesn't feel safe speaking of it, but her drawings reveal what she knows. Please be careful. This man is haunting her even in silence." After she left, I sat Emma down at the kitchen table. Her little fingers fiddled with Mr. Buttons as I gently asked, "Sweetheart, the man you drew, who is he?" Her lips trembled. She leaned close, whispering, "Grandma, he's the one Mommy was scared of. He told her if she didn't listen, bad things would happen to me." My chest tightened. The shadow of Victor Hale loomed larger than ever. That night, unable to rest, I lit a candle and prayed. I begged Daniel for strength, begged God for protection. Every creak of the floorboards made my nerves jump. Every gust of wind rattling the shutters felt like an intruder lurking nearby. Just after midnight, I heard a faint scraping sound outside the window. I froze, straining to listen. The scrape came again, followed by the soft crunch of footsteps on gravel. My pulse thundered in my ears. I crept to the curtain and pulled it back just an inch. A figure stood across the street, half hidden in the shadows. Tall, broad-shouldered, still as stone. Even from the distance, I could feel his eyes on my house. I backed away, locking the window. My trembling fingers dialed the precinct. Captain Monroe answered, his voice steady even in the late hour. "Stay calm, Mrs. Calloway. Keep the doors locked. I'll send a unit immediately." Within minutes, patrol cars arrived, their headlights sweeping across the block. But by then, the figure was gone, swallowed by the night. The officers searched the area, finding nothing but footprints in the damp soil. Monroe examined them with a grim expression. "These aren't random. Someone was watching your house." Likely him, Emma woke from the commotion, clutching Mr. Buttons, her small face pale. "Grandma, is he coming for me?" she whispered. I hugged her tightly, whispering, "No, sweetheart. Not while I'm here." But deep down, I couldn't shake the dread. Hale wasn't finished. The next day, Margaret insisted on staying over. "You need another pair of eyes in this house," she said firmly, setting her bag down. Her presence was a comfort, though worry lined her face. That evening, she and I sat on the porch as Emma played with chalk on the steps. Margaret leaned closer and said quietly, "Evelyn, I heard rumors. They say Hale's followers are still in town, hiding in plain sight. He's not just one man. He has people everywhere." The thought made my stomach churn. If that's true, then Emma is still in danger. Margaret nodded grimly. "Yes, and so are you." As the sun sank and shadows stretched across the yard, Emma suddenly paused in her drawing. She pointed toward the alley and whispered, "Grandma, someone's watching again." My blood ran cold. I turned my head slowly, but by the time I looked, the alley was empty. That night, as I bolted the doors and checked the locks for the third time, a heavy realization settled over me. Hale wasn't hiding anymore. He was circling, closing in, waiting for the moment to strike. The following evening, the air felt heavy, thick with a tension I couldn't shake. Even Emma seemed restless, clutching Mr. Buttons tighter than usual as she sat on the rug, humming nervously to herself. Margaret stayed close, her presence a steady anchor, but I could see the worry etched into her face. Just after dusk, the phone rang. I lifted the receiver, my hand trembling. It was Captain Monroe. His tone was urgent. "Mrs. Calloway, we have intelligence that Hale may attempt to make contact tonight. Do not leave your home. Officers are patrolling nearby, but I need you to stay vigilant. If anything happens, call immediately." My pulse quickened. "Do you really think he would come here?" A pause, then his voice hardened. "Yes, you and Emma are his most likely targets." After hanging up, I drew every curtain tight, bolted the doors, and turned off the lights. The house fell into tense silence, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock and the faint whistle of wind through the shutters. Emma crawled into my lap, whispering, "Grandma, is the bad man coming?" I kissed her forehead. "Not while I'm here, darling." "You're safe." But in truth, I wasn't certain. Hours passed in uneasy quiet. Margaret dozed on the couch, though I could see her shoulders stiff, as if even in sleep she remained on guard. I sat by the window, staring into the darkness outside. Then it came, the faint crunch of footsteps on gravel. My breath caught. Slowly I rose, peeking through the curtain. A figure stood at the edge of the yard, tall, cloaked in shadow, motionless except for the faint shift of his head. Even from the distance, I felt the weight of his gaze. My knees trembled. Suddenly, Emma stirred. She slipped from my lap and padded toward the window, her voice a whisper. "Grandma, it's him." I grabbed her hand, pulling her back. My voice was hoarse. "Stay away from the window, Emma." The figure took a step closer, then another, moving with deliberate slowness. My heart thundered so loudly I thought it might burst. Margaret jerked awake at the sound of Emma's gasp. She shot up, eyes wide. "Evelyn, what is it?" Before I could answer, a sharp knock rattled the front door. 3 heavy blows that echoed like thunder through the house. Emma screamed, burying her face against my side. I forced my trembling legs to move toward the door, but I didn't open it. My voice shook as I called, "Who's there?" Silence. Then a low, chilling laugh seeped through the wood. Margaret clutched my arm. "Don't open it," she hissed. The knocks came again, louder this time, rattling the frame. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. Should I call Monroe? Was there even time? Suddenly, red and blue lights flashed outside. Sirens wailed, breaking through the suffocating silence. The figure vanished into the darkness, swallowed by the night. Within moments, officers swarmed the yard, weapons drawn, scanning every shadow. Captain Monroe himself rushed to the porch. "Are you all right?" he demanded. I clutched Emma tighter, tears streaming down my face. "He was here," I whispered. "He knocked on my door." Monroe's jaw tightened. It was him. "Hale's playing games, trying to rattle you, but this means he's close. Too close." The officers combed the area but found nothing except footprints trailing off into the woods. Still, the evidence was clear. Hale had been at my doorstep. As dawn broke, Emma finally drifted into uneasy sleep. I sat beside her, unable to close my own eyes. Margaret placed a hand on my shoulder. "You can't face him alone, Evelyn." "Promise me you won't." I nodded weakly, though inside I knew a darker truth. Hale would not stop. He had come once, and he would come again. And the next time, I feared, he wouldn't just knock. But one thing was certain. I would fight with every breath left in me to keep Emma safe. The sun rose pale and cold the next morning, its light doing little to chase away the shadows of the night before. I hadn't slept at all. Each creak of the house, each groan of the timbers had kept me on edge. Emma stirred at last, her little arms still wrapped tightly around Mr. Button's, unaware of how close the darkness had come. Captain Monroe returned just after breakfast, his face drawn and weary. He set a file down on my kitchen table, the weight of it heavy, as though it contained more than paper, as though it held every secret still binding us to Victor Hale. "We found traces of him," Monroe said, his voice low. "Footprints leading into the woods, cigarette ash left near the creek bed, but he's slippery, always one step ahead. We believe he's staying close, watching." I shivered. He was here. He laughed at my door. My granddaughter heard him. Monroe's jaw tightened. "That's his tactic, fear. He thrives on it. But know this, Mrs. Calloway, he's running out of places to hide." Margaret, who had stayed the night, stood with arms crossed. "You can't expect Evelyn and Emma to live like this. They need protection." Monroe nodded. "I've already assigned 2 officers to stay nearby at all times." But Hale is cunning. He blends into crowds, changes his look, manipulates people. We suspect he has followers still loyal to him, willing to risk everything to keep his secrets alive. The thought sent a chill down my spine. I glanced at Emma, now coloring quietly at the table, her crayons scratching softly on paper. She had drawn a house with a bright sun overhead, but in the corner, a dark figure lingered. My throat tightened. Even her innocent drawings carried the shadow of Hale. Later that afternoon, I walked Emma to the park, accompanied by one of the officers. Other children laughed and played, their voices ringing with joy, but Emma stayed close, clutching my hand. When another little girl tried to join her game, Emma shook her head, whispering, "I can't. The bad man will see me." I knelt, holding her gently. "He won't find you here, my darling. You're safe with me." But the truth was, I wasn't sure. That evening, Margaret helped me prepare supper. The smell of stew filled the kitchen, but the heaviness in the air never lifted. She finally said, "Evelyn, you can't keep carrying this burden alone. The police are doing their part, but you need to rest." For Emma's sake, I tried to smile, though exhaustion weighed on every part of me. "I'll rest when he's gone. Until then, I can't afford it." That night, I tucked Emma into bed, whispering prayers over her. Once she drifted off, I sat by the window again, staring at the street. Every flicker of movement made my heart jolt. Near midnight, I noticed something odd, a slip of paper wedged under the porch railing. Cautiously, I stepped outside, the night air biting at my skin. My fingers trembled as I pulled it free. In jagged handwriting, it read, "She belongs to us. Stop fighting or you'll lose her too." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My hands shook violently, the note nearly slipping from my grasp. I stumbled back inside, bolting the door behind me. Margaret rushed from the couch at the sight of my face. "What is it?" "What happened?" I handed her the note. Her eyes widened with horror as she read it aloud. Emma stirred upstairs, sensing the tension. I rushed to her side, sitting at her bed, stroking her hair until she calmed. But even as her breathing steadied, I could still hear the echo of the threat. "You'll lose her, too." Victor Hale was no longer circling. He was sending warnings. And the war for Emma's safety had only just begun. Morning light streamed weakly through the blinds, but it did nothing to ease the chill inside me. The note sat on the table, its jagged handwriting burning into my mind. "She belongs to us. Stop fighting, or you'll lose her too." Emma padded into the kitchen, still clutching Mr. Buttons. She tilted her head, noticing the paper. "What's that, Grandma?" I quickly folded it, forcing a smile. "Just something silly, sweetheart." Nothing you need to worry about. But inside, dread clawed at me. Margaret arrived with fresh bread, her eyes darting toward the note. "You have to show Monroe," she urged. Reluctantly, I agreed. Captain Monroe came later that afternoon, his expression dark as he studied the message. "This is Hale's handwriting." "We've seen it in his old case files," he confirmed. "He wants to scare you into silence." I clenched my fists. "He won't win." Not while I still breathe, Monroe met my eyes. "Then understand this. He's escalating." He's circling closer, but we're closing in on him too. His arrogance will be his downfall. After he left, Emma clung to my hand more tightly than usual. "Grandma," she whispered, "what if the bad man comes again?" I knelt, pulling her into my arms. "Then he'll find me standing in his way. And I won't let him pass." That night, I tried to distract her with stories of Daniel. I told her how her father used to chase fireflies in the yard, his laughter echoing through the summer nights. Her eyes lit up briefly, and she asked, "Did Daddy love me, Grandma?" Tears stung my eyes, but I smiled softly. "More than anything, my love. He loved you with his whole heart." For a moment, the shadows seemed to lift. But as Emma drifted to sleep, I sat by the window again, unable to let my guard down. Hours later, near midnight, I saw headlights flash across the yard. A van slowed as it passed the house, then crept forward again. My stomach knotted. Was it Hale? Was he watching from behind tinted glass? The van rolled away, disappearing into the dark, but I couldn't shake the sense of eyes on us. The following day, I visited the market, Emma's small hand in mine. Whispers followed us once again, though their tone had changed, no longer mocking, now fearful. "That's the grandmother," I heard one man murmur. "The one Hale's after." Mrs. Miller hurried over with a pie wrapped in cloth, pressing it into my hands. "Evelyn, stay strong," she whispered. "We're praying for you." Her kindness warmed me, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. Hale's shadow loomed over everyone now, not just me. When we returned home, Mr. Whitaker was waiting at the fence. His cane trembled in his grip. "I saw him last night," he said quietly. "A man standing at the corner, watching your house. I swear it was him." My heart sank. "What did he do?" "Nothing," Whitaker whispered. "Just stood there." "Like he wanted you to know he was near that evening?" Monroe called again. "We've traced one of Hale's followers to an abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of town. We believe he's using it as a hideout. Are you going to arrest him?" I asked, breathless. "We'll try," he said, "but I wanted to warn you first. If Hale feels cornered, he may lash out." After I hung up, I stared at Emma as she colored quietly at the table. Her little shoulders hunched, her head bent low, as if the weight of this nightmare pressed on her too. I made a silent vow then. If Hale dared to step foot near us again, I would not hide behind curtains or locked doors. I would face him myself if I had to, because Emma wasn't just my granddaughter. She was the last piece of Daniel, the last light in my life, and I would fight the devil himself before letting her go. The farmhouse sat at the edge of town, its roof sagging, its walls weathered by years of abandonment. When Captain Monroe drove me past it to identify the area, my chest tightened. Even from the road, it exuded something sinister, as though the walls themselves had absorbed Hale's cruelty. "We believe he's been here recently," Monroe explained, his eyes on the cracked windows. "Neighbors reported seeing lights at odd hours. But we need confirmation before moving in." I gripped the strap of my bag tighter. "You think he's planning something?" Monroe's jaw clenched. "I think he's always planning something." Back at home, the tension grew heavier by the day. Emma refused to play outside, even in daylight. She kept to my side, her eyes constantly scanning the street as though expecting Hale to appear at any moment. One evening, as I tucked her in, she whispered, "Grandma, I had a dream. Daddy told me to be brave. He said you'll keep me safe." My throat tightened. I stroked her hair, whispering back, "He's right, sweetheart. I'll always keep you safe." But when I returned to the living room, Margaret could see the exhaustion etched across my face. "You can't carry this forever, Evelyn," she said gently. "You'll collapse." I sank into Daniel's old armchair, staring at the faded photo on the mantel. What choice do I have? If I falter, Emma suffers. I can't let that happen. Later that night, unable to sleep, I found myself staring out the window again. The street lay quiet, but every flicker of shadow made my skin crawl. Then I saw it, a faint glimmer across the road, as though a match had been struck. The glow lasted only a moment, then vanished. I stayed frozen, heart pounding. Was Hale out there, taunting me again? The next morning, the officers stationed nearby confirmed they had found a burnt matchstick and cigarette ash in the alley. "He was watching," one of them said grimly. By midday, Monroe returned. He spread photos across my table. Images of strange symbols painted inside the farmhouse, candles burned to stubs, children's toys scattered across the floor. My stomach churned. "How many?" I whispered. "Too many," he said softly. "We believe Hale's been using that place for years." Emma wandered into the kitchen, her teddy bear dragging against the floor. She glanced at the photos, her face paling. She pointed at one of the symbols. "Grandma, I've seen that before." I turned to her sharply. "Where, sweetheart?" She hesitated, then whispered, "On Mommy's necklace. She used to wear it when she went out at night." A chill tore through me. I remembered that necklace. A silver chain with a strange pendant I once thought was just an odd trinket. Now I saw it for what it was. Hale's mark. Monroe scribbled notes quickly. "This ties Marissa deeper into his circle. Every detail helps us close the net around him." That evening, Margaret insisted on staying again. "He's circling, Evelyn. I can feel it. Don't be alone together." We sat on the porch, Emma nestled between us, her small hands gripping mine tightly. The night was quiet, too quiet, as though holding its breath. Suddenly, a dog barked violently down the street, followed by the slam of a trash can. Emma jumped, her eyes wide with terror. I hugged her close, whispering reassurances, though my own heart raced. As the hours dragged on, I felt the truth pressing against me. Hale wasn't just a shadow anymore. He was drawing nearer with each passing night, pushing us toward a confrontation neither of us could avoid. And when that moment came, I knew it would be a battle of more than flesh and bone. It would be a battle of will, of spirit, of a grandmother's love against the darkest evil imaginable. The days blurred together, each one carrying the same heavy weight of dread. The farmhouse discovery had shaken me deeply, but it also gave me a grim sense of clarity. Victor Hale wasn't hiding forever. He was circling, waiting, planning. Emma clung to me more than ever. Even in daylight, she refused to let go of my hand, her wide eyes darting at every passing car. At night, she whispered in her sleep, murmuring words I couldn't always understand. Sometimes I caught fragments. The man, Mommy, basement. Her little face twisted in fear even as she dreamed. I sat awake, night after night, keeping vigil by her bed. Exhaustion gnawed at me, but fear kept me from closing my eyes. I couldn't afford weakness, not now. One afternoon, Captain Monroe returned, his face lined with fatigue. He laid another file on the table. "We've confirmed Hale has at least 4 known followers still active in this region," he said. "They move supplies for him, deliver messages, and keep watch." Margaret, seated across from me, stiffened. "You mean they could be anyone? Neighbors, shopkeepers." "Exactly," Monroe interrupted grimly. "That's why you must be cautious with everyone." I swallowed hard, thinking of the whispers at the market, the unfamiliar faces in church, the figure watching from the alley. Paranoia gripped me, but perhaps it wasn't paranoia at all. That evening, while Emma colored quietly at the table, I found her drawing another picture. This time, she sketched a house surrounded by trees, with a tall figure standing at the door. In the window, she drew two small children with sad faces. "Emma, what's this, sweetheart?" I asked gently. She looked at me, her voice trembling. "That's where the bad man lives. Mommy showed me once. She said if I didn't behave, I'd go there too." My chest tightened. "Do you remember where it is?" She shook her head. "No, just trees, lots of trees." When I showed Monroe the drawing later, his face grew grim. "It matches descriptions of another property tied to Hale." "We're investigating." That night, after Emma fell asleep, Margaret and I sat in the dim living room. The wind rattled the shutters, and the house groaned as though sharing in our unease. Margaret broke the silence. "Evelyn, if anything happens, if he comes here again, promise me you'll call for help immediately." I met her eyes, weary but resolute. "I promise. But if it comes to it, I won't hesitate to stand in his way." Just past midnight, I heard it again, the crunch of footsteps outside. I rushed to the window, pulling the curtain back just a fraction. A shadow lingered near the corner of the yard, still and silent. Margaret joined me, her breath catching. "Is it him?" I couldn't see his face, but I felt it. That same suffocating presence, heavy as stone. My hand shook as I clutched the phone, ready to dial Monroe. But before I could, the figure stepped back into the darkness and vanished. Emma stirred upstairs, whimpering in her sleep. I hurried to her side, stroking her hair until her breathing steadied. But even as I soothed her, I knew the truth. The circle was tightening. Hale wasn't just haunting us anymore, he was testing us, probing our strength. And soon, very soon, he would make his move. The tension in the house grew unbearable. Emma barely slept, her tiny body curled into mine each night, as though she feared I might vanish if she let go. Margaret stayed often, refusing to leave me alone, but even her presence couldn't shield us from the suffocating dread. One evening, Captain Monroe arrived with urgency in his step. He laid new photographs across my kitchen table, grainy surveillance images of a man slipping through the woods, carrying bags and stopping near the abandoned farmhouse. "It's him," Monroe said flatly. "Victor Hale. We've confirmed his identity, and we believe he's preparing something big. He won't stay in hiding much longer." I felt my blood run cold. "What does he want?" Monroe's voice hardened. "Control. Fear. And to silence anyone who stands in his way." His gaze flicked to Emma, who sat quietly in the corner, hugging Mr. Buttons. "That includes you and your granddaughter." Emma's small voice broke the silence. "Grandma, is the bad man going to come here again?" I pulled her close. "If he does, sweetheart, he'll find us waiting. And we won't let him win that night." I could not sleep. The wind howled outside, rattling the shutters. At one point, I thought I heard a faint laugh carried on the breeze, low, mocking, unmistakable. My heart pounded. Was it imagination, or was Hale circling once more? At dawn, Monroe called with grim news. "We've located his hideout in the forest beyond the old quarry. But we believe he's planning to move tonight. If we don't act, he'll disappear again." "Then go," I urged. "Finish this." "We will," he promised. Then softer, "But I want you ready. If he realizes the net is closing, he may come after you one last time." All day I prepared. I kept Emma close, locking every window, bolting every door. Margaret sat with me, her face pale but her spirit steady. "You've carried this far longer than anyone should," she whispered. "But tonight, it ends." As darkness fell, the air grew unnervingly still. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by Emma's soft breathing as she clung to her teddy bear. I sat by the window, a lamp glowing faintly at my side, waiting. Then it came, a sound so soft yet unmistakable, the crunch of gravel. Margaret's hand tightened on mine. Evelyn. I stood, my knees trembling but my resolve firm. Through the curtain's thin gap, I saw him. Tall, gaunt, eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Victor Hale. He stepped into the yard as though he owned the earth beneath him, his movements slow, deliberate, terrifyingly calm. Emma stirred behind me, whispering, "Grandma." I pressed a finger to my lips. "Stay back, sweetheart." Another knock rattled the door. Slow, measured, each blow echoing like a heartbeat. Hale's voice followed, low and chilling. "You can't keep her forever, Evelyn. She belongs to us." My hands shook, but I stood tall. "You'll never have her," I called back. "Not while I'm alive." Silence. Then that laugh again, deep, cruel, mocking. But before he could strike, red and blue lights flared outside. Sirens split the night as police cars screeched to a halt. Officers poured into the yard, their shouts filling the air. Hale snarled, retreating toward the alley. For a moment, his gaze locked with mine through the window. A promise, a threat. Then he vanished into the shadows as officers gave chase. Emma clung to me, trembling. Margaret whispered prayers under her breath. And I, though shaking to my core, felt something shift. This wasn't the end yet. But the end was coming. The night Victor Hale was finally caught marked the end of the longest nightmare of my life. Captain Monroe returned at dawn with weary eyes but steady resolve. "It's over," he told me. "Hale has been taken into custody." "He won't hurt anyone else again." I held Emma close, tears streaming freely. She looked up at me, her small face finally free of fear, and whispered, "Grandma, we're safe now, aren't we?" I kissed her forehead, my voice breaking. "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe. It's truly over." In the weeks that followed, laughter slowly returned to my home. Emma began drawing flowers again instead of dark shadows. Sophie Turner was reunited with her parents, and their gratitude overflowed each time we met. Neighbors who once doubted me now offered their apologies, their voices heavy with shame and respect. But I didn't carry pride in my heart, only relief. Relief that Emma was safe, that Daniel's little girl could grow up without Hale's shadow haunting her. At night, I sat by the window with Daniel's photograph in my hands, whispering, "Your daughter is safe, my son." I kept my promise. Emma often crept into my lap, clutching Mr. Buttons, and murmured, "Grandma, don't ever let go." And I would hold her tightly, whispering back, "Never, my love. Never." The darkness had been defeated, but its memory would linger. Still, through every scar, we had survived. And love, the fierce, unyielding love of a grandmother for her granddaughter, had triumphed over fear. If you stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? I want to know how far this story of justice has traveled.